On the morning of October 7th, as over 3,000 rockets launched from Gaza battered Israel, Hamas terrorists breached the borders, launching a coordinated and brutal assault on over 20 Israeli communities. More than 1,200 men, women, and children were murdered, and over 200 hostages were taken in a day of incomprehensible violence, the deadliest in Israel's history. For Canadians, this wasn't a distant tragedy. The Canadian Jewish community and countless others felt the attack as a personal blow. It wasn't just an assault on Israel, it was an assault on the Jewish people, on families across the world, and especially here in Canada. In Shattered Voices, we hear from Canadians of all walks of life whose lives were forever altered by that day as they share their pain, their fears, and their resolve. These shattered voices echoed the deep trauma felt across Canada, showing that October 7th's impact knows no borders.
Devastating. Devastating. There's no other word for it. It's just affected the whole Jewish world.
I was in a state of absolute shock.
Was I surprised? No, because this is something that had been in the making for many, many years. It was not something that happened as a knee-jerk reaction. I was shocked and horrified at the brutality. That goes without saying. But we, those of us who have worked in this field, speaking out against the Islamist ideology, we were not really surprised.
October 7th, there's life before October 7th and there's life after October 7th. And October 7th changed everything.
Terrible what happened that day. So many hostages were taken.
Considering the brutality, scale, and the criminality, I think it was act of evil.
3,000 rockets were fired at Israel within the first hours of the onslaught. Hamas's military wing, the Qassam Brigades, and at least 4 other Palestinian armed groups committed unspeakably barbaric, sadistic, savage war crimes.
Not only like the scale of the violence, but the acts that were committed and how just atrocious and graphic and on another level it was compared to every other, car ramming, stabbing, things like that we've seen.
Witnessing the loss of so many precious, innocent lives that were perished on that day, and so many taken hostage as well, consisting of children, women, elderly, young, men, being killed, raped, even pets being tortured, killed, and also taken hostage in such a vicious way.
These barbarous, cruel acts took away the ordinary people's life, make the land unpeaceful, and bring the terrorist strikes on the peaceful land, the peaceful people.
Shattered voices.
Shattered voices.
Voces quebradas.
Shattered voices.
Shattered voices.
Shattered voices.
Shattered voices. Shattered voices.
I woke up. I couldn't believe it. I had so many messages, so many texts. I thought it was I didn't know what to think. Events of October 7th triggered a lot of my own personal traumas. As a woman, I'm a fighter. I fought for women from all walks of life, but I couldn't do anything for those women. I can't even imagine what those girls are going through. Those two babies, Biba's family. It breaks my heart.
I had the opportunity to visit Israel back in May. I saw the destruction in the kibbutz of Kfar Aza and Nir Oz, the Sodot police station site, and the Supernova Festival, which is now a great graveyard of death and destruction. The thoughts of being at the Nova Festival site and just watching those just seeing those bomb shelters and people who have been trapped there and were mercilessly killed. Just those things would always stick with me in my entire life. And in fact, when I came back from Israel, I had spent some sleepless nights, and it was hard. It was very heartbreaking, and not even heartbreaking, but it was sad to see what the civilian life would meant.
What was really disturbing for me as a medical student at McGill was seeing my medical peers and colleagues, not just other medical students, but also doctors and people who are in positions of power over Jewish patients, over Jewish trainees, celebrating the October 7th massacres. So seeing medical students posting in celebration of the October 7th attack, seeing them post things on social media denying that the October 7th attack happened, or denying that people were raped, or blaming Jews for the whole thing, saying that it was Israel that did it, that it was a false flag attack. These are medical students, some of whom have now been allowed to graduate.
Initially, of course, that was the reaction of people, that they didn't believe that October 7th happened. But it wasn't soon after that the facts started unfolding. So despite the fake news and despite the social media propaganda, which I also believe had been in the making for a year at least before the attack happened, all this planning had taken place. Billions of dollars were put into those social media programs by, again, the mullahs in Iran, the regime in Iran, and heavily funded by them. But you can't avoid the facts. As the facts started emerging, granted they were slow, but soon people realized, you can't avoid looking at the facts.
As someone who grew up here, to not be able to walk around in my daily life, just feeling comfortable, that's really, really sad.
I was living downtown at the time, and I would go to the gym, and after October 7th, most nights when I would want to go to the gym, I would have to walk through protests of people basically yelling about killing people like me and my family and all my friends. And you walk through these protests and your heart is pounding, and I felt like I was in a TV show. It didn't feel like real life. I got to the point where I was having one of my roommates walk me when I would go to the gym, and I kind of developed this paranoia when I was walking around downtown and in my neighborhood, and I felt like I was going crazy, and I felt like I was always scanning for predators in a very primal sense. I was always on the lookout for people who I thought would want to harm me, people, they looked at me a certain way, things like that. I became very, very paranoid. Then, we started hearing about schools that were being shot at, and people setting fire to Jewish institutions and things like that. And it like really hit me like, okay, this is not the Toronto that I grew up in.
My dad always just used to say to me, he said, "You have a place in this country because we made it your place." And it was the first time that I felt like I didn't belong somewhere in this country. I've never felt that before in my entire life. And then when I went onto campus the next day, I just felt this supreme anxiety of like, do I belong here? Is it okay if I'm Jewish in this country anymore? I'm not allowed to stay safe because of something that isn't even happening in this country, that I had nothing to deal with, that my grandparents who came here after their entire family was murdered don't deserve to be in peace. It's disgusting to me, and it's rattling every time I walk onto campus.
Since October 7th, people feel almost that they have a free reign of not fact-checking anything, of not checking any veracity or credibility or proof of what they're posting, and that it's okay now to disagree with Israel and use words like genocide, like apartheid, when it's absolutely not true at all. And there's no distinction or no fact-checking done.
There's a small but not insignificant component of the Montreal community and also the McGill community who are really happy that October 7th happened and feel like it's acceptable to kill anyone that doesn't believe with their ideology, that doesn't align perfectly with their specific ideology, which is essentially that Israel is a colonial state, and like all colonial states, Canada, the US, they just have to be wiped off the map. You know, irrespective of the fact that Israel is really an indigenous land for Jews.
How am I supposed to feel physically safe in an environment where people are adopting radical positions, including academic boycotts, specifically targeted at Hebrew University, with which I'm associated, calling for people to wear masks, and camping overnight, involving outsiders to the university, and my own university doesn't say anything about it and doesn't do anything about it. I found that situation completely reprehensible. There was no excuse for it then, there's no excuse for it now. Academic colleagues showing up at events wearing keffiyehs, including a few Jewish faculty members wearing keffiyehs. The long-standing anti-Semitism in this country, if anything, came out of the closet even more in the aftermath of October 7th.
Hate speech is criminal, period. And if they're not calling what's going on the streets hate speech, I don't know what is. I think we have to relook at the moral inversion that's guiding our governmental body and take 20 steps back.
I think the most important thing to understand is that certainly for every Jewish person out there, our world has completely changed. We thought we lived in a safe society where people had respect, and it seems like that's just not the case any longer, and it's just not right that we can't walk in a country like Canada around the block. I mean, I proudly wear the tags, and I sometimes even throw my kippah on just for the fun of it, because I'm not going to let them win, but we shouldn't have to feel that way. We shouldn't have to feel like this is a battle. And it is. It's a battle for the survival of the Jewish people, and it shouldn't be.
Our community needs to stand with the Jewish community in here in Canada, because that's where it impacts at home. And I think that's the need of the hour. And I think every community needs to understand that standing up for the Jewish community doesn't mean being anti-Arab or anti-Palestinian. You know, if we care about the Arab community, we must condemn the actions of Hamas and their affiliates that are harming the interest of Arabs in Palestine. So yes, our community needs to understand that they need to have that moral clarity, that terrorism terrorism affects everybody, and the human life is important.
I
personally am afraid that majority of people do not feel that they are in danger. I'm not that much afraid about myself. I'm at the stage of life that, none of us knows how much time we get here in this world before we depart. But I have children. I have grandchildren. And they should be able to safely live in this country. They should never, not my children, not anybody's children or grandchildren, should face a choice that I face for different reasons, that I have to leave my country and look for other place to live. This is a great country, it's still a great country, but we can't let it slip away from us.
The thing that scares me the most is that there's no longer a place for Jews to feel safe. Because on campus, we're not allowed to feel open about our ideas, about what we feel and what we think, about our religion, our country, our nationality. And even when we go off campus, whether it be at the Jewish Public Library or the Holocaust Museum or synagogues, they're all being constantly attacked. And if we can't feel safe in one place or another, I don't feel safe at walking home anymore. I don't know what I'm gonna walk into. On my block, my mom was walking her dog. A guy ran down the street, started yelling "fucking Jew" at one of the Orthodox Jews who lives in my area. I don't feel safe anymore.
I don't know necessarily how to process what's going on, and especially with the peaceful protests, it doesn't feel peaceful.
I think Canada has changed completely. The government has changed. They're putting restrictions on anything you do.
What we're facing is not just a threat against Judaism and Jewish and Zionist life, but a threat against, I think, Western ideals and democracy. And the sooner that we realize that through strong connections between cross-cultural communities, the more resolute and the greater resolve we have as Canadians and Torontonians. And I think that's what we need to do.
People have got to wake up, realize it's going to be over here too. If you don't wake up, it's going to happen over here. It's going to happen in the US.
We are worried about the universities. We are worried about our children in our Jewish day schools. We are worried when we go back to synagogue very shortly for the high holidays.
I wish there was a more unequivocal condemnation of the acts of terrorism perpetrated by Hamas on October 7th, and I don't think our government has been strong enough in being clear about that. And I think that Israel has unequivocally a right to defend itself, and that there has to be broader recognition of that within the federal and provincial levels. And seeing the proliferation of protests in downtown Toronto and on university campuses has been disheartening as a Jew. And I do firmly, personally believe that the presence of these sort of anti-Semitic organizations and congregations pushes the needle further in favor of overt acts of anti-Semitism, and that we do need to combat them.
Long live October 7th! And we say today, long live October 7th!
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
When we call for intifada! Islamic Jihad is not a terrorist organization. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine is not a terrorist organization. Hezbollah is not a terrorist organization. These are our heroes.
What I witnessed here in Canada after October 7, maybe I wasn't paying enough attention what was going on, but I seen on TV the protests of people that are in support of Palestine. And there's nothing wrong with supporting people of Palestine. I mean, people have right to peaceful existence, and that's okay. But I just couldn't understand the amount of hatred. And personally, I saw it. I did go to the walk with Israel, and there were a couple of groups present protesting. One was very loud, and you know what? If people are protesting, they should not be allowed to cover their faces, to hide their identity.
People need to unpack that sentence, phrase from the river to the sea, which basically means all of Israel. And when people say that, there are some people, I don't believe they understand what that means and need to be educated on what that means, that they are asking for the removal of Jews from all of Israel, which of course is wrong. For the people that do know what that means, and that's what they are expecting, of course, even more upsetting. So I think there's levels of education that need to happen with people.
The government should have a principled policy. I mean, tell the people what is right and what is wrong. Don't be ambiguous. Don't be equivocal. Tell the people to do what is right and not to do what is not right. And enforce the law of justice.
More should be done on all three levels of government. I understand it's very difficult. We worked together with B'nai B'rith on a campaign to end online hatred, and while everyone is sort of agrees in solidarity that this is wrong, a lot of the hate starts online. We need to be able to prevent this. Once you start looking into it and the sort of avenues towards it, how do we do this? You start to run into issues of free speech and censorship, and that's also difficult to navigate. So these are very challenging. It's, we can say nice things about what we hope to see, which I always do at the events that we host, at, projects that we are part of, but that there are realities on the ground, and but absolutely more should be done. There's no way that anyone in Canada should be going outside and fearing for their lives or their children going to school throughout the day because of something that's happening abroad. It's just unacceptable.
Well, Canada can do so many things better. I mean, Canada can firstly take a principled stand. We understand that there are politics here, but Canada has to recognize that this is not, this is a moment in time. This is not just a continuum. And Canada really has failed, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of taking a principled stand against hatred. The Prime Minister says the right things, but we're seeing what I have come to understand are federal hate crimes not being prosecuted.
The quality of a society is based on how it treats its most vulnerable minority. And in Canada, it's probably Jews. In the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, it was the Jews. And the fact that right now Jews feel threatened in every single regard of their life shows that Canadian society is, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, going into a place that is reminiscent of what my grandparents went into. It's not there. It's nowhere, not even near there. But it's going into that place that I don't know what's going to happen.
Very lackadaisy. From a municipal viewpoint, if in reference to here in Montreal, law enforcement, the mayor, city admin, they're sort of treating the situation as just something general that has just happened, every day or every weekend. Something, there's a protest here and there. I think they need to take it, I know they need to take it a lot more seriously. There's people's lives that are in jeopardy on a daily basis, our children, the attacks on the schools without any real sort of repercussions for the perpetrators that have done so. And they're again, we're in the status quo, so to speak, of elected officials and municipal. From a provincial side, it's even worse.
Number one mission for the Canadian government is try to defund, identify the sources of income for these proxies and those who actually promote anti-Semitism as well as hate, as well as extremism inside Canada. All these that are being shown in different format, whether inside the university campuses, inside media, or in different forms of so-called non-profit organizations, they should be identified how they are being funded. There is no way that these activities are being run without any serious funding on the background. So that is an easy task. I think the authorities here have certain mechanisms to go and try to find out, how funding is being directed towards these things that cause. For example, we have this Al-Quds rally on an annual basis in Canada. There is sufficient funding behind this through different ways. I do believe that there is a lot of illicit funds through different sources that has ended up, unfortunately, in Canada, and that's the main root cause of these kind of things in Canada.
I think there's a trauma that affects us. I think there's a fear. I think there's a duality. On one level, there is a pride in terms of standing up to be counted, and we've seen this in manifestations of peaceful protests, and the 25,000 who came out with colors. But on an individual basis, I think there's still fear. There's disbelief that the bubble of North America in terms of democracy and protection and safety and sanctity and safety basically has been pierced, has been totally broken.
To see our politicians basically both buying and selling the propaganda of terrorist organizations made me extremely disappointed, and it definitely made me feel less safe as a Canadian citizen. And my government has no intention of fighting for me.
The Canadian government is not principled. Far from addressing the ripple effects of the event, government has, in effect, emboldened the violent actors to do what they are doing. The law enforcement is too lukewarm.
We here on Canadian soil should demand from people that come here not to bring their own problems that from the places they left, because they left to, I would assume, look for a better place to live, for a better place for themselves, their families, their children. And this is the place. But don't bring the stuff here. We can't solve problems there by creating chaos in this country.
Canada is the country that was at one point the peacemaker in the world, and they should do that again. They need to look at immigration so that new immigrants are not bringing in years-old hatreds and bringing them to life in Canada. That's a very important point, and that's something I have also written and spoken about. We need to have a better communication. We need to have better security and safety for specific communities who are targeted. And one of the most important things that the government needs to do is look at the educational institutions. Educational institutions should be for education and not for politics, which is what we have seen happening. Not a place where violence can be allowed. There should be places, because this is a free country, where free discussion and debate should take place. People have a right to their opinions. People have a right to rally for their causes, because we live in a democracy, but hate is not part of that. And so when our government, when our leaders see that hate is becoming the cause, they have to stop it right there and set an example so that no one else will then say, okay, I can go out on the street and perpetuate violence and hate against another community.
This is not the nation I came to looking for a better life. This is not the Canada I want to have. This is not the Canada that the great majority of people want. Because why? Because we want everyone to be able to have their kids safe in school, to work in places where everyone is respected, to walk safely in the streets, and to worship in freedom in our temples.
I hope that Canada going forward will put more emphasis on education of tourists and also fighting the hate, especially online hate, that really affect the visible minorities and marginalized communities.
I would like to see our leaders at all levels educate themselves and then educate Canadians on what's really going on. In all war, mistakes are made, and there have been mistakes made by the IDF. But I know, and many reputable international bodies have published reports confirming that the IDF is going about its operations in Gaza with the utmost care. We need our country to clearly stand with Israel. I myself have made a point of reaching out to the Jewish community to let them know that they're not alone.
Enforce the laws and the regulations that are in place. We have police forces, we have other agencies that have a job to protect our borders, to protect our citizens, and they should be able to do their work, to do their job. We all should be subject to the same laws and regulations, and nobody should be expect to be above the law.
We can bring about change. Change is necessary, and change will come if we don't give up. We can't let what is happening around us stop us from speaking out.